Today I'm going to be interviewing a female sergeant. Hey guys, what's going on? I hope you are having a fantastic weekend so far. I'm super excited about this video today. You guys have been requesting this for so long now, I can't even tell you, probably since the beginning of the channel. A lot of you have requested a female be on the show, a female officer. So on top of being a female officer, she is also a supervisor. She is the rank of sergeant, and we're gonna be asking her your most upvoted questions today. Anyway, this is Lori. Lori, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Without further ado, we are going to jump into the questions that you guys have asked us, and I'm really excited to get into this. A lot of the questions that you guys asked were sort of similar, so even if I gave you a heart and I don't read your comment exactly, it was probably because someone else asked the exact same question. So I was seeing a common theme with some of these questions, but let's hop into it. First question is from that redheaded bitch. As a female law enforcement officer, how do you address the physical strength aspect? Most women aren't as physically strong as men. How do you compensate for this to keep yourself and others safe?
Well, of course, you have tools other than just physical strength. I mean, you got men officers that are not as physically strong as others. But I find you got to learn to talk to people. You can definitely calm people down by talking, just as some muscled men can physically calm people down. I'm an advocate of working in a jail before going on the street because you do have to learn to talk to people. I worked in the jail for 7 years. So you learn kind of how to calm people down and how to talk to people, and can talk yourself out of a lot of situations.
And that applies to males and females. I mean, being able to talk yourself out of a situation, not necessarily out of it, but to be able to diffuse it with just words is really the goal. That's what we want. We don't want to have to use physical force. So if we're able to do that using verbal judo, that's a huge benefit for us. And to give you guys just a little bit of a backstory, Lori and I actually went to the police academy together 12 years ago. And so we have known each other for a long time. We've done the whole process. She has worked with the same department this entire time. I started with a different department and I joined the one that we're at now about 4.5 years ago. So just a little backstory there. Next question is from Zoe. What is the hardest part about being a female in law enforcement?
Of course, you automatically get judged a lot, especially seems like more so by the male officers probably than the public. A lot of times you have to prove yourself before they will trust you to back them up. I've had that so many times where when we are in a bad situation and I have jumped in there and went hands-on afterwards, the male officers be like, oh, okay, yeah, now I can take you to any call with me now that I know that you will jump in there. But a lot of times you still have to prove yourself to the men that you work with, more so than anyone else. And
that's a very unfair assumption to make in general, because I've seen, I mean, there's plenty of male officers I wouldn't want backing me up.
That's true too.
And I can speak just because I've worked with Lori for so long. She is not afraid to get her hands dirty. She will jump in there and throw hands with somebody in a heartbeat. I learned a long time ago not to judge a book by its cover when it comes to officers. We actually had an officer at the previous department I worked at, and she was more badass than any of the other men on the shift. Next question is from Katie Dwyer. What is the ratio of male to female officers generally?
That depends a lot on the department and different things. I am the only female on my shift right now, but we have some shifts that have 2 or 3 female officers, so it kind of varies.
So I'm sure somebody's gonna ask in the comments, how many, since you're the only female on the shift, how many officers are on the shift?
15 right now.
So 1 out of 15. But again, the ratios do change. It depends on the department, the shift. I mean, there's so many variables, but in general, it tends to be a small ratio compared to male officers.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Next question. I was told that as a rookie, you're already more inclined to be taken advantage of. As a female, the probability and danger levels increase. In your experience, would you agree? If so, any advice or helpful information?
Any rookie is going to be taken advantage of, as far as, I'm not sure exactly what they mean by that, but if they're talking about as far as you're going to get stuck with the most reports, and that's just part of it. That's part of the learning process. And the more you get bombarded with work, the more you're going to learn time management and how to get stuff done. So I don't feel like I was really taken advantage of. I was made to take a lot of reports, but that's all rookies.
Do you feel like female officers are given more work than the male officers when they're in training?
Not necessarily. I will say as a female, in general, you're probably going to get stuck with a little more work because the male officers are going to call you to search just about every female. Certain transports, like medical transports, is by law, it's still required in our state anyway, that a female transport a female, unless a family member or something like that's in the car with the male officers. So in general, you're going to get stuck with all the female transports where you got a bunch of men that'll, you know, divvied out between them. But you're also going to get stuck. You have to search females and males, where the male officers try not to search females, so you end up getting that too. But other than that, as far as reports go, that's just a rookie thing in general. All rookies should take as many reports as possible. Now you will have, I guess, maybe some FTOs that may be harder on females because they want to make sure you can handle it. But then you got some that's going to be just as hard as men as they are on women. That just kind of varies and depends.
Next question is from Becca. Do you feel you have to change how you act in order to get hired or be treated as an equal? Like try to blend in as one of the guys and such?
Sometimes, yes. Yeah, I guess I've been around long enough till I'm considered one of the guys for the most part.
She actually made a comment about that. You remember that on Friday? About one of the supervisors said she was just one of the guys.
He calls me a dude. So, yes, somewhat. And you've got to, if you got to get a tough skin. If you get offended easily, this may not be the line of work for you because you're around a lot of guys. And if they know you get offended, then they're going to avoid you, and you don't want that. Law enforcement is, for the most part, like a big family. You want to be part of the family, you're going to have to grow a tough skin and not get offended very easily. Because, I mean, they may make a joke. And I do still get, and it kind of irritates me a little bit, they'll make a joke and I walk in the door and they kind of shut up. Or if I'm standing there and they think I heard it, they're like, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, I've heard a lot worse. I mean, you're going to hear a lot worse out on the street than what you're going to hear from your coworkers. So. And
this is not a question from, the pool that I got, but this is just from me. Have you noticed a different response from officers as a female supervisor than maybe a male sergeant would get? Do you get more compliance from officers? Do officers tend to challenge you less because you're female in a supervising position? Or is there really no difference?
That's a good question. I do sometimes get labeled as like the mom of the shift, which then again, I have a lot of young guys that work for me, where I don't feel like if a male treated them the same way I do, they're not going to be labeled as a parent. But that may work to my benefit because they may not necessarily argue with me as much as they could a male. But I'm not sure. That's a good question, but I see my supervisor and how the guys work with him, but he's not one you would try to argue with anyway. But I may get a little more respect. Let's put it that way. I may get a little more respect as a female just because some of them see me as like a mom figure. But I think that's with the public as well. Like, I've shown up on so many scenes where whoever we're out with is a male and they're cussing the male officer out, and I show up and they're like, oh ma'am, I'm sorry. So sometimes you get more respect on the street as being a female too. Opposite side of that, you get some men that don't like women and you show up on the scene and they're gonna call your names, and it is what it is.
Next question is from Allison. Is something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu an important skill women should learn to be more effective when apprehending a male or larger suspect? What, if any, extra training do you think would help?
I'm sure it wouldn't hurt, but I don't know it, so I don't know Jiu-Jitsu. But then again, you got to be careful too that you don't use excessive. If you do know martial arts or something like that, if you don't get a little carried away and roundhouse somebody, probably wouldn't be a good thing. I'm sure it would be a good skill to have.
And there are courses that they offer, particularly with us. It's called Defensive Tactics, which specifically focuses around ground fighting. So there are options that are available for post-credit training through whatever state you're in for courses like that. So you don't necessarily have to be enrolled in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or some other martial arts. But it is helpful because if you're only taking a defensive tactics course, once every even year, will it benefit you? Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to hurt. But at the same time, you're not going to be very proficient in it if you're not doing it routinely.
Funny story. So when we were in the academy, the Friday before, the week before we were going for defensive tactics the next week, I pulled a muscle. And if you got injured, there was a possibility you would get kicked out of the academy. So of course, I struggled through the day, went to the doctor. They were like, yeah, you pulled a muscle, take it easy for a few days. Well, I gotta be back at the academy Monday. That's not really an option. So Mr. 401 here was he was a young kid at the time, and he was so nice, and he was my defensive tactics partner, and he knew I was hurting. So he's like, you know what, I'll take it easy on you. So he took it easy on me, and I got my little high scores. Well, then when it was my turn to play bad guy, I went at him with everything that I could. And
I don't remember this.
Yeah, I know you don't. You have a bad memory because I've told you this story like 3 times. But it was super funny because the guys was giving him a hard time because he was getting manhandled by a female. But you have to think at that time I'm quite a bit older than him, and I had worked in a jail for many years, so I just gritted my teeth and bared the pain and fought with him with everything I had. But he took it easy on me when I was playing the cop and he was playing the bad guy. So it was pretty funny.
Next question is from Megan. Is there a lot of sexual harassment of female officers, either from other officers or the general public?
I don't. There's always going to be some. I'm old now, so I don't have to deal with it as much as I probably did when I first started out at the jail, at 20, 21 years old. But there's always going to be some, but I think nowadays it's more so everybody's scared that a female's going to yell sexual harassment, that they go the opposite and try to not say stuff in front of you or tell jokes that might offend you. And to me, that makes it more difficult. If you're going to be part of one of the guys, you want them to be able to feel comfortable enough around you to say stuff and trust that you're not gonna get offended easily and get a complaint started on them because they feel like you feel like they've said something wrong. So there's a fine little line. Yes, if they're making specific comments to you that could be harassment, yeah, that's not good. But if they just make some sort of joke in front of you and I'm offended, and I don't know how everybody's policy is, but ours basically says, if somebody offends you, you tell them, and then if they offend you again, then basically you can file a complaint type thing. But I guess that's any job. You could have that too.
Next question, is SWAT strictly for males, or if females can prove to be up to physical standards, can females also be a part of SWAT?
Yes, females can be. We've had one, since 2008, so 12 years, we have had one female officer on our SWAT team. The SORT team at the jail, I was on the SORT team when I worked at the jail, but there was only 2 female positions there, and there they had a set number of female positions. Our department, you've got to pass the test just like the male officers, and it's a pretty tough test. So the one female that did finally make it tried out multiple times. You got to be able to perform, do everything just like the men does, and it's a pretty tough.
So there's no separate test for females as far as SWAT goes?
Yeah, not that I know of. I believe it's the same exact standards as the male. I don't know if they may have some small curve. I don't know. I've never tried out, but it's rough even for the guys. One of the guys on my shift is in the gym every day, muscled up. He's the one we send out chasing people when they run because he is a good runner, and he didn't make it on the last SWAT tryout. So if that tells you anything, it's going to be extra tough for a female to make it.
Next question, with law enforcement being seen as a predominantly male-dominated profession, how did you gain adequate respect while climbing through the ranks? Or do you ignore any sexism you may encounter?
I guess you gain respect, number one, by doing your job, not being afraid to go hands-on. I come into this job every day with the knowledge I could get hurt today, I could get killed today, you got to be prepared that and be okay with how I'm gonna do what I gotta do, and I guess I take the mindset what happens happens type things. I probably do ignore a lot of sexism that I encounter. I don't know, how did I gain respect climbing through the ranks? Your opinion?
One of the first things that I noticed, because she was my FTO when I came to this department. Yeah, she was my FTO for a very short period of time. It was like a formality that I had to go through FTO. It was an abbreviated version of it. But one thing I noticed about Lori, and I ended up working for her as a subordinate when she was my sergeant, is the fact that she never was afraid to take a report. She didn't put calls on hold, and you'll see this with a lot of supervisors. They will hold 12 calls and wait for the officers to clear up from whatever they're on and go take those calls. She never did that. If we had a report or we had something pending, unless she was busy, she would go out and take it herself. So she would sometimes have more reports than the officers working the zones. And I think for a lot of people on that shift, that was a huge thing which I've always respected you anyway, but people that didn't go to the academy with you and have known you this period of time, that's one of the many aspects I think that we have for respect toward you. Because supervisors don't have to take reports, but she does.
I don't get to take as many now because I'm stuck doing more paperwork, but I try.
Next question, how can you be in law enforcement while having a family? And what happens if you get pregnant while in law enforcement?
Good question. Our agency will work, we've had a couple of female officers that's got pregnant while working with our agency, and they work with them, and usually, once they get to the point where they don't feel comfortable working the road or possibly having to get physical with people, they'll usually put them in an office type position or light duty type position.
Can you give an example for them what that might mean? Oh,
like working in our records division, basically printing reports for people, taking phone calls, taking reports in our lobby, that type thing. Sorry. I do have a child. I worked 5 years of straight night shift. When we had an option, we used to have a permanent night shift where you could, day shift and evening shift rotated, but you could stay on nights. And I did that when my child was smaller so that I could get off of work in the morning, go get her ready for school, take her to school, go home, get a little bit of sleep, and pick her up for school in the afternoons. I guess I'm more of an equal rights type thing. I don't feel like women should get special treatment, but we do have some officers that, I'm a mom, I need to change shifts so I can be home with my child. Well, I'm a mom too, and have been for 14 years. I did, like I said, went to night shift, and then when she got older and my situation changed where I needed to be at home at night, luckily they started doing permanent day shift, and I got on that for a very short time. And then I moved close to family so that I had babysitters right down the road. So you've got to make arrangements and do what you can do. It's hard, but there's men that are single parents too, people, and they don't get special treatment either. Some people may not like my response, but I feel like, you got to make it work. You got to do what you got to do. And it's not fair that a single mom gets special treatment any more than a single dad would.
All right, next question. I'd love any advice on how to prepare for the oral board or chief's interview. What can I do to make a great first impression and stand out from the other candidates?
First of all, be confident. Don't go in there unsure. Be sure with your answers. When you say your answers, make sure you stand behind them and you're sure about what you say. Don't go in there and say, I want to use this as a stepping stone to go into something else. Who wants to hire somebody that's planning on leaving in a year? I would say, and once you get on, take all the training opportunities you can. There is a lot of training in law enforcement that nobody wants to do. You're gonna definitely be put outside your comfort zone. You're gonna do things you don't want to do at all, but you gotta do them. And you just gotta look at it as the more experience, the better. The more things you can try, the more things you can do, the better. So.
And I've told you guys before on the channel, don't go into the interview saying, I want to help the community. Because even though that might be your intention, I guarantee you the past 30 applicants have said the exact same thing. So try to come up with a unique answer, and I can't really give you anything over camera because you have to find something that fits you personally. That's a very personal question for somebody that's applying as an individual to a police department. So it's really going to depend on you to come up with that unique answer. But I guarantee you one of the questions is going to be, why do you want to work at this police department? Why not work at another one? Why do you want to get into law enforcement? Next question, are there any disabilities specific to women that would prevent them from working in law enforcement?
Disability, I wouldn't say. I mean, of course, you know, we don't have the physical strength that a lot of men have. You're smaller than, I don't know very many women that are 7 foot tall, but I have dealt with some men on the street that are 7 foot tall. There are, I wouldn't say disabilities, but there are going to be some times where you're going to be dealing with somebody that's 2 foot taller than you. But that's where being able to talk to people comes in. You're going to hear me probably say that 5 times because I'm a big advocate on learning how to talk to people. We get a lot of young guys that come in muscle bound and are like, I'm the police, you got to do what I say. If you, especially as a woman, if you take that stance on a call, you're gonna get hurt. I don't like it when guys take that stance on calls. Which, you know, I'm big on the community policing. I like getting out and talking to people. If you work a certain area and you get out and get the respect of the people in that area, and you treat them with respect, they will know. And to this day, I deal with people that were inmates in the jail, and they know when I worked in the jail, it was, you treat me with respect, I'll treat you with respect. And they, to this day, I mean, I've had one a while back that was fighting, cussing, everything else with the officer, and I got there and he, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were standing there. I know, you know, I wouldn't disrespect you like that. So earn the respect of not only your fellow officers, but the public, the community. Yeah,
and specific to the disabilities, as long as you are able to pass the tests to get into police work, you should be fine. There are medical waivers that are available if there is something that you do believe might be debilitating somehow, but that would have to be taken up on an individual basis with that specific department.
You got to be able to do the, if you're going through the academy, you got to be able to do the PT. Mm-hmm. So as long as you don't have some sort of disability that would prevent you from doing the physical aspect, and then I know most departments have a psych test, so the job itself, after you pass the tests and the struggles of going through the academy and getting your certification, then if you pass those, there shouldn't be any other disability that you would have that would hinder you.
Next question, what are some of the struggles you've seen your fellow female officers go through that you felt was due to gender differences?
So, I feel like this is more of a generation thing, but the younger females that come into, that I see that come into law enforcement, and I'm probably going to make some people angry with this answer, but
those are always the best answers.
I think a lot of the younger female generation that comes into this expects special treatment because they're a female. Yes, we need females in law enforcement, but I do not feel like you should get your schedule altered or get certain positions because they want to keep you as a number because they need females to work for a department. I don't like that. Like I said, I started in law enforcement in 2000, so we had to prove ourselves. And now it's like a lot of the young females think that the department's supposed to cater to them, and then they want to pull the female card if something doesn't go their way, and maybe he might have picked the wrong female to be on here because I don't like that. I picked you specifically. I did, because I mean there's a lot of females I know that are in law enforcement and stuff, but I really feel like Lori paints a very accurate depiction of what it's like to be a female. And I've also known her for a long time. I know she's a straight shooter. I know she's not going to sugarcoat anything. So I was actually really excited to have you on the show. And we were going to wait until this whole pandemic thing was over with. But I really wanted to get this video out because a lot of you have been asking for it. So I was really excited to have you on here. And one thing you haven't asked, but I feel like needs to be brought up. I know it's going to be said something about the tattoos. If you are male or female in law enforcement, in my opinion, you need to make sure you're with the department you plan on retiring with before you get a sleeve, because a lot of agencies do not still allow tattoos. There's been times where I've thought, man, I'd like to go to this other agency, but they do not allow visible tattoos, and I would have to wear long sleeves every day, all day, and it's kind of hot out there. So that hasn't been asked, but figured I'd bring that up. probably especially as, a female, but you see more common on men that tattoo the sleeves, but you're starting to see it more in females too. But anyway, make sure you're with the department you're doing basically what you want to be doing, and your department's not going to have an issue with them, because it does limit departments that'll take you in jobs that you can do.
Well, we are also in the Bible Belt, where we are 50 years behind everybody else in society. So I think that's also another factor. Luckily, our department's pretty cool about it. So I debated on whether or not I was going to include this question. It's kind of lengthy, but I figured it was maybe something that kind of needed to be answered. Next question is, this is from Sam Rittner on Facebook. I don't mean this in a negative way at all, and I already know that someone will label me as chauvinistic for asking this, but it is a legit question. Why are there two sets of physical agility standards, one for men and one for women? I ask that question with the utmost respect because in the real world, it's not like a criminal is going to look at a female cop and go, oh, you're female, I should take it easier on you and not run as hard, fast, or far.
That's a good question. But if you look at it, so most physical, and different departments are different, but I have, tried out for other departments that, okay, women had more sit-up. They had to do more sit-ups than what the men had to do because, let's face it, muscle groups are different for men and female. Females don't have as hard of a time doing sit-ups as men do. Females didn't have to do as many push-ups as the men. Well, men usually have more upper body strength than females. I think that's a lot of times just the physical makeup of men and women. Now, as far as, a timed run, I know some agencies do give females longer run times than men. Like we said, our agency, I'm pretty sure it was the same for men and women. Can't answer that for every department, but I believe from what I understand, a lot of it has to do with the makeup of men and women, the physical aspect. I know when I started at the jail, we had to do a stretch test to see how far you could stretch, and women are more agile than men in general, so the men didn't have to be able to stretch as far on that little block as the women did. So
no, and see that's when people ask about these tests for the physical standards and stuff, first of all, no physical standards test determines whether or not somebody's going to be a valuable person in law enforcement. Let me state that first. Even with that being said, I failed miserably at the sit and reach. We had a little metal box with a slider on it. We had to slide. And I was 20 years old doing this test, and I got the lowest score out of everybody because I'm not flexible. So to base whether or not somebody should be in law enforcement on their physical abilities, I think is BS, but that's just me. I understand that there's two tests. I don't think it's necessarily wrong. Now, for something like SWAT, I think that might be a little different, where maybe it is fair to have one standard because you do have a certain expectation of how that person needs to perform in the field in a high-stress, dangerous situation. But as far as going into an academy or passing the academy with exact set standards for both, I don't necessarily agree with that. Yeah. I do think you need to be in somewhat physical good shape to do the job, but I don't think there should be a set standard for you know what I mean, across the board.
Yeah, and if you look at it, might make some men mad, but in general, women are better shooters. I don't know the science behind it, but women usually are better, higher shooters than men. So I don't know what all standards are at all departments. I don't necessarily believe physical strength is everything either, because like I said, there are some muscle men that can go into a situation and make it 10 times worse. Yes. You will end up fighting with 10 guys, whereas you win about one person that was causing problems. Some little old tiny females that can go into that same situation and have everybody calm down and sitting around a campfire. It's not always about physical strength. That should, that of course is some of them. If you're chasing somebody, you got to be able to jump a fence. You got to be able to draw your gun and shoot if you need to. But it's not everything. And I don't know about other places, but I know 12 years ago when we went through the academy, the physical part of it was just showing improvement. So, we had some that could not run the whole run every day. And back then I wasn't a big runner. But as long as you say, if you started out and you were running a mile in 15 minutes and at the end of it you were running that same mile in 10 minutes, you showed improvement, and that's what they wanted to see, that you were trying to improve and better yourself, I guess.
All right, last question. This is from Jocelyn. What is permitted once you are a female cop? Examples being colored contacts, long hair, short hair, nails, dyed hair, etc. Thank you in advance.
Okay, hair. Our department is not supposed to be touching your collar. When I'm working right now, my hair is pulled up. If you've got long hair, a piece of advice I got many years ago from, we had a female jail administrator, and when I started out and was young and had really long hair and I had it in a ponytail, and I was walking down the hallway one day and she grabbed me by that ponytail and snatched me backwards and informed me if I was fighting with somebody, they could use that to sling me around and it would not be good. So if you got really long hair, I would suggest, whatever your policy is, bun it up. Our policy at our department is no fingernail polish. So as bad as I sometimes want to get my nails done.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that, but it is written in policy that yes, females are not supposed to wear nail polish.
Guess I need to cancel my appointment.
But that's there's standards for men too. The men can't have facial hair and they can only have certain length hair. At least we can have it as long as we want, as long as we got it pulled up where it doesn't touch it's not supposed to touch our collar.
What about color contacts? Is there a policy in place for it?
Don't believe there is a policy in place for it. I know I used to have some of the little whiteout contacts that maybe, and I wore them to briefing one night. My lieutenant told me to take them out, but it was like Halloween and I was gonna, that was with, that lieutenant's not here no more, but.
So we have come to the conclusion of the video, and I would like to ask Lori, do you have any additional information or tips or anything else that you would like to pass on? Again, most of these questions revolved around, how you're treated as a female and stuff, and hopefully she answered that well enough. I know this is gonna be a long video, spend the whole rest of the day editing, but hopefully she answered most of your questions. But do you have any additional tips?
I don't know if I should say this or not, but
that means yes, it should be said.
I'm also a believer, if you have never been in any type of physical altercation in your life, you never had an older sibling you got into a physical altercation with, or you never got into a fight in elementary school, go to a gym and get in a boxing ring with someone or something before going into law enforcement. Through the years, I've seen several people come into this job and
freeze up,
go through the academy and go through everything, and then get on the road, and the first time they get into any physical type confrontation, they decide it's not for them. I'm sorry, don't waste people's time and money and possibly get your fellow officers hurt if you have not had any sort of physical altercation and you don't know what you can do. I mean, before I come to this job, I've been punched in the face. I knew, maybe not. Well, no, I did. I got punched in the face. But just know that you can take a punch, give a punch if you need to, do what you need to do. Know that if you get into that fight or flight situation, you can stand there and fight and not run and leave your fellow officer fighting for their life.
Or freeze up.
Yes.
And just stand there watching.
Yes.
And nobody's gonna bash you for wanting to get out of law enforcement if it's just not for you. We would much rather you figure that out early on and remove yourself and not make yourself a danger to either yourself or other officers, rather than doing it years later and somebody gets hurt. So if you get into this and you figure out, you know what, this is just not for me, don't force it. Get out, it's fine. Go find something else. There's plenty of other occupations out there for people to have. This is not a job for everybody. So either way, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Lori, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I'll try to address them accordingly, and we might do a part 2 video. We'll see how it goes. But either way, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and I will see you guys very, very soon.